5 generals, millions of men under their command, but which one faced enemies so brutal, so relentless, so impossible to defeat that every other commander's war looks like a practice drill? Today, you're about to discover the answer, and by the time we reach number 1, you'll understand why one man's battles make D-Day look manageable. The standards are simple, but unforgiving. Enemy quality, were they facing conscripts or elite fanatics? Enemy numbers, did they fight outnumbered or with overwhelming support? Tactical difficulty, mountain warfare, urban combat, or open plains? Strategic odds, adequate supplies, or starving logistics? And survival rates, did their enemies surrender or fight to the last breath? These 5 generals didn't just win battles, they won battles they had no business winning against enemies that history remembers as unstoppable. Let's start at number 5. May 27, 1942, Libya. The desert sand is still radiating yesterday's heat. Through his binoculars, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel counts 11 British tanks burning on the horizon, black smoke pillars rising into the cloudless sky. His Africa Corps has just torn through the southern flank of the Gazala line during Operation Venetia, another victory for the Desert Fox. But Rommel knows the truth that his superiors in Berlin refuse to accept. He's winning battles while losing the war. His fuel gauge reads empty again. His supply officer delivered the bad news an hour ago. Malta-based British aircraft sunk another convoy. Ammunition, food, fuel, all resting at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea. Rommel destroyed 90 British tanks today, but he can't replace the 10 he lost. The British can lose 100 and have replacements by next week. This is Rommel's war. Brilliant tactics, impossible logistics. The mathematics of defeat. Every victory makes his situation worse. Every advance stretches his supply lines further across hostile territory. Every shell he fires brings him closer to running out completely. The mathematics are brutal and unforgiving. North Africa is 1,800 miles from Berlin. Every single gallon of fuel has to cross the Mediterranean under constant British air attack. And Malta, that tiny island fortress, stands directly between Italy and North Africa like a castle blocking a bridge. British bombers, fighters, submarines, all operating from Malta, destroying 60% of Rommel's supply convoys before they ever reach African shores. The Germans tried to capture Malta. Operation Hercules. It failed. Rommel is stuck fighting a war he cannot win because Hitler won't give him the resources he needs, or more accurately, cannot. Germany's industrial capacity is focused thousands of miles away on the Eastern Front. Russia is devouring entire divisions. North Africa gets scraps. Montgomery's patience. The British know this. Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery takes command of the 8th Army in August 1942. He studies Rommel's supply situation with cold calculation, realizes the Africa Corps is starving, so Montgomery does something Rommel cannot do. He waits, builds up overwhelming superiority, stockpiles ammunition until his supply dumps overflow, gathers tanks until he has numerical dominance. Then, only then does he attack at El Alamein when Rommel is at his absolute weakest. October 23, 1942. When the British artillery opens fire at El Alamein, it sounds like the end of the world. 1,000 guns, 90 minutes of concentrated hell. Rommel's intelligence officer hands him the casualty report with shaking hands. British strength, 195,000 men. 1,029 tanks, fuel and ammunition, unlimited. Axis strength, 116,000 men, 547 tanks, fuel remaining 3 days, maybe. How do we win this? The officer asks. Rommel doesn't answer, because you don't win with empty tanks. The retreat. The battle lasts 11 days. Rommel's tanks run out of fuel on day 7. The Africa Corps retreats, not because Montgomery outfought them, but because they literally cannot move anymore. Rommel tries to establish defensive lines. British tanks simply drive around him. He orders counterattacks. His panzers roll 50 yards and stop. No fuel. His infantry fights with rifles and grenades, while British artillery obliterates their positions from miles away. It isn't a battle, it's an execution. Rommel faces an enemy that can afford to lose. The British Empire's industrial capacity is 50 times larger than what Germany allocates to North Africa. Every British loss is replaced immediately. Every German loss is permanent. Rommel wins battles through genius tactics. Montgomery wins the campaign through basic arithmetic. Normandy, the impossible defense. But Rommel's toughest battle comes later. Normandy, June 6, 1944, D-Day. Rommel commands Army Group B, defending the Atlantic Wall against the largest amphibious invasion in human history. 5,000 ships, 11,000 aircraft, 156,000 Allied troops landing on the first day alone. Rommel predicted this. He begged Hitler for permission to position panzer divisions near the beaches where they could counterattack immediately. Hitler refused, kept the panzers under his personal control 100 miles inland, convinced the real invasion would come at Calais. When the invasion begins at 6:30 a.m., Rommel cannot move his tanks without Hitler's direct permission, and Hitler is asleep at Berchtesgaden. No one dares wake the Führer. By the time Hitler authorizes the panzer release at 4 p.m., 10 hours later, Allied air power has already destroyed most of the roads. The tanks cannot reach the beaches. They crawl through rubble and bomb craters while Allied fighter bombers circle overhead like vultures. Rommel fights Normandy with one hand tied behind his back. The cost of loyalty. Hitler interferes with every tactical decision. The Luftwaffe is destroyed. 3,000 German aircraft versus 15,000 Allied. Allied air power is absolute. Every German movement during daylight hours is spotted and bombed within minutes. Rommel starts moving only at night, retreating in darkness, fighting delaying actions, losing. July 17, 1944. Rommel's staff car is driving near St. Foy de Montgomery when two British Spitfires spot it. They dive, open fire. 20mm cannon shells rip through the car's thin armor. The driver is killed instantly. The car crashes into a ditch at 60 miles per hour. Rommel is thrown clear, but his skull is fractured in 3 places. Left temporal bone crushed. He's evacuated to a hospital in Germany. He never returns to command. The final choice, 8 minutes to 8:45. The generals offer a choice: public trial and execution, family imprisoned and disgraced, or suicide, state funeral, family protected, pension preserved. Rommel chooses suicide, cyanide capsule. He dies in the back of a staff car, 15 minutes from his house. The official story says heart attack. Germany gives him a hero's funeral. His wife and son don't learn the truth until after the war ends. Erwin Rommel faced enemies he couldn't defeat, not because they were better soldiers, but because they had unlimited resources, and he had nothing. He won battles while outnumbered, outsupplied, and outgunned. But in modern war, genius doesn't beat logistics. Rommel proved that the hard way. But before we continue to number 4, if you are hooked on this ranking, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the rest of this list, because the enemies only get tougher from here. Now, let's talk about the man who fought the most fanatical soldiers in history. Number 4, General Douglas MacArthur. The Vow. The explosions light up Manila Bay like daylight. March 11, 1942. General Douglas MacArthur stands on a PT boat dock, watching his war collapse. Japanese bombs rain down on American positions, fires burning across the harbor. 76,000 men, his men, surrounded, starving, dying on Baton Peninsula. Roosevelt ordered him out. "You're more valuable alive," they said. MacArthur feels like a coward. He looks back at the Philippines one last time, whispers 4 words that sound like a prayer. I shall return. Not a promise, a vow. Those 4 words aren't just dramatic, they're a threat, because returning to the Philippines means defeating the most fanatical enemy in World War II, the Japanese Imperial Army. The enemy that never surrenders. An enemy that doesn't surrender, an enemy that fights to the last man, an enemy that turns every island into a fortress and makes the Americans pay in blood for every single yard of ground. MacArthur's war is different from every other theater. Europe has cities, roads, supply lines. The Pacific has jungles, mountains, and 5,000 miles of ocean. Every island is isolated. Every invasion requires amphibious assault. Every battle is fought in brutal terrain against an enemy that prefers death to surrender. The statistics tell the story. In the European theater, 19% of German soldiers died in combat. In the Pacific theater, 97% of Japanese soldiers died in combat. They don't retreat, they don't surrender. They build bunkers, tunnels, caves, fight until killed. When ammunition runs out, they fix bayonets and charge. Banzai attacks, suicidal frontal assaults, screaming, "Tenno Heika Banzai," long live the emperor. The Japanese believe surrender is dishonor worse than death, so they choose death every single time. New Guinea, the green hell. MacArthur faces this enemy across dozens of islands. New Guinea, 1942 to 1944. Buna, Gona, Ley, Salamaua, Hollandia. Every village is fortified. Every ridge is defended. But the jungle itself is the first enemy. Malaria infects 85% of troops. Dysentery is universal. Fungal infections rot skin faster than medics can treat. Men fight in mud that reaches their knees, carry 70-pound packs through mountains covered in triple canopy jungle, where visibility is 10 feet. Temperatures exceed 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Humidity stays near 100%. Uniforms rot off bodies within weeks. But the terrain is nothing compared to the Japanese defenses. At Buna, December 1942, MacArthur's forces encounter bunkers built from coconut logs. American .30 caliber bullets bounce off like rain on steel. Artillery shells are absorbed by the logs and sand. The bunkers have to be destroyed individually. Flamethrowers, grenades, close combat, crawling through mud to within 10 feet, shooting flames through firing ports, burning men alive. The battle lasts 2 months, 3,000 Allied casualties to take a village that held 1,500 Japanese defenders. Every single defender dies, 0 prisoners. Island hopping strategy. MacArthur learns, he develops island hopping strategy. Bypass heavily defended islands, cut them off, let them starve. Attack where the enemy is weak, leapfrog towards Japan. The strategy saves lives, but the battles don't get easier, they get worse. Leyte Gulf, October 1944. MacArthur returns to the Philippines, wades ashore at Leyte Island with cameras rolling. The famous photograph, MacArthur in sunglasses, striding through surf, determined face. But the cameras don't show what comes next. 4 months of brutal combat. The Japanese commit their entire remaining fleet, and they unveil a new weapon that changes naval warfare forever. Kamikazes. The first time in history an enemy uses suicide as primary tactics. 2,800 kamikaze sorties, pilots deliberately crashing explosive-laden aircraft into ships. The destroyer USS Cooper, hit by a kamikaze, breaks in half, sinks in 1 minute. 191 sailors dead. The escort carrier USS San Lo, direct kamikaze hit, explodes, sinks in 30 minutes. 113 dead. Over and over,
Ships burning, men screaming, and the kamikazes keep coming, because to the Japanese, dying for the emperor is the highest honor.
Manila, City of Death. February 1945. MacArthur's forces fight house to house through the Philippine capital. The Japanese naval marines defending the city refuse to surrender. Fight to annihilation. They execute Filipino civilians in the streets, massacre hospital patients in their beds, burn churches with families locked inside. Manila is destroyed. 100,000 Filipino civilians die. The Japanese defenders die to the last man. 0 prisoners taken, because 0 prisoners offered. This is MacArthur's war. Every battle against an enemy that weaponizes death. For 4 years. The Pacific death toll is staggering. 111,000 American dead. Over 2 million Japanese dead, military and civilian. The casualty rate per square mile is higher than any theater in World War II. MacArthur faces an enemy that can't be reasoned with, negotiated with, or convinced to surrender. An enemy that turns suicide into tactics, makes every square mile of territory cost hundreds of lives. He defeats them by accepting that cost, by grinding through island after island, by matching Japanese fanaticism with American industrial power and firepower. Douglas MacArthur breaks the Japanese empire one island at a time, faces the most fanatical enemy in World War II, wins because he understands that victory requires accepting casualties that would horrify any other general. Number 3. General George S. Patton. The impossible order. Patton's hands are shaking, not from cold, from rage. December 19, 1944. The map on his desk shows a bulge, a massive German penetration through American lines. Bastogne surrounded, the 101st Airborne cut off, 300 miles of frontage collapsing. Eisenhower will call an emergency meeting tomorrow. Patton already knows what Ike will ask. Can Third Army wheel north and relieve Bastogne? Every officer in Patton's headquarters says, impossible. Winter ice, 133,000 men turning 90 degrees north, 11,000 vehicles, while maintaining offensive operations against German forces to their front. The staff says it will take weeks to plan. Patton looks at them with those cold blue eyes. We attack in 3 days. Anyone who says we can't is fired. He keeps his promise. December 22nd, Third Army attacks north, relieves Bastogne on December 26th, saves the 101st Airborne, turns the Battle of the Bulge from potential German victory into catastrophic German defeat. And he does it by fighting the toughest, most desperate German forces of the entire war. Fighting cornered wolves. Because by December 1944, Patton isn't fighting the Wehrmacht that conquered Europe. He's fighting cornered wolves. The Germans know they're losing, know the war is over, but they fight anyway, fight harder. The Battle of the Bulge is Germany's last major offensive. Hitler throws everything into it. SS Panzer divisions, Fallschirmjäger paratroopers, his elite units held in reserve, veterans who fought since Poland in 1939. These aren't conscripts. These aren't second-rate garrison troops. These are fanatics. SS soldiers who believe Nazi ideology to their core. Men who know surrender means execution for war crimes. Officers who sworn personal oaths to Hitler. They fight with suicidal determination because they have nothing left to lose. And Patton faces them in the worst possible conditions. Winter hell. Winter in the Ardennes. temperatures below 0 Fahrenheit, snow 3 feet deep, vehicles can't move off roads, artillery can't dig in, frozen ground is harder than concrete. Visibility is 0 during storms. Air support is grounded by weather. The Americans have to fight without their primary advantages: no air power, limited artillery, restricted mobility. The Germans have tactical advantage. They know the terrain, have prepared defenses, occupy the high ground. They've studied American tactics for 4 years, know how to counter them. The Battle of the Bulge isn't a surprise German attack. It's a carefully planned operation exploiting American weaknesses. The initial assault hits the 106th Infantry Division, Green troops, 5 days in combat. The division collapses. 7,000 Americans surrender on December 19th, the largest American surrender in the European theater. But Patton's Third Army isn't green. They're veterans. They've fought across France. They're angry. Their buddies are surrounded at Bastogne. Patton understands anger. He feeds it, uses it. No bastard ever won a war by dying for his country. He won it by making the other poor, dumb bastard die for his country, Patton tells his men. The cost of momentum. Third Army attacks in blizzard conditions. Visibility 50 feet. Tanks sliding on ice. Infantry wading through snow up to their waists. The German resistance is ferocious. SS units counterattack constantly. American casualties mount. 100 men per mile advanced. But Patton doesn't care. He keeps attacking. Momentum is everything. Keep moving, keep attacking, force the enemy to react instead of plan. It works, but the cost is brutal. Third Army suffers 50,000 casualties during the Battle of the Bulge, December 1944 through January 1945. 50,000 men killed, wounded, missing, or captured in 6 weeks. That's 1,200 casualties per day, every day, for 42 consecutive days. The casualty rate exceeds anything Third Army experienced in France. But Patton doesn't stop. After the Bulge, Third Army pushes into Germany, crosses the Rhine on March 22nd. No pause, no rest, just constant forward momentum. They drive deep into Bavaria, liberate Ohrdruf concentration camp on April 4th. Confronting evil. Patton walks through the camp, sees the bodies stacked like firewood, sees the survivors who look like skeletons wrapped in skin. He throws up. Then he gets angry. Orders every German civilian in the nearby town to tour the camp, makes them look at what their government did. Some Germans cry. Others say they didn't know. Patton doesn't believe them. He says they knew. They all knew. Third Army reaches Czechoslovakia by war's end, and everywhere they go, they face German forces fighting delaying actions, retreating slowly, making the Americans pay for every mile. The Wehrmacht is collapsing, but individual units still fight with professional competence. Fanatics to the end. Patton's final battles are against SS units making last stands, fanatics who won't surrender, units that execute their own men for cowardice, officers who shoot soldiers trying to retreat. The Nazi Party has turned parts of Germany into armed fortresses. Volkssturm militia, old men and boys with rifles, Hitler youth with Panzerfausts, civilians fighting alongside soldiers. The line between combatant and non-combatant has disappeared. George Patton faces Germany's elite forces at their most desperate. The Battle of the Bulge is Germany's best units making their best effort under their best conditions. They fail because Patton refuses them to succeed. He outmoves them, outfights them, outwills them. And he does it in winter, under the worst possible conditions, against an enemy that prefers death to surrender. Patton proves that speed and aggression
overcome tactical disadvantage, that offensive action defeats defensive preparation, that the best way to fight desperate enemies is to give them no time to be desperate, just constant, relentless pressure until they break.
We're down to the top 2 generals. The enemies get even tougher from here. Make sure you hit that like button if this is blowing your mind, and drop a comment telling me which general you think faced the toughest opposition. Now, let's talk about the man who commanded D-Day. Number 2, General Dwight D. Eisenhower. The Decision. June 5, 1944. Eisenhower stares out the window at Southwick House, watching sheets of water hammer the glass. 30-foot waves in the channel, 40-mile-per-hour winds. His meteorologist, a captain who looks about 16, just gave him a 36-hour weather window, maybe. After that, storms for 2 weeks. 156,000 men waiting, 5,000 ships loaded, tens of thousands of tons of ammunition, food, fuel. If he postpones, the Germans might discover the plan. If he launches in bad weather, thousands will drown before reaching the beaches. Montgomery is watching him. Bradley is watching him. Tedder, Smith, Ramsey, all watching, waiting for him to decide. The room is silent except for rain hammering the windows. Eisenhower's mouth is dry. 4 words. That's all it takes. Okay, we'll go. Those 4 words commit 2 million Allied soldiers to combat against the most fortified defensive position in military history. The Atlantic Wall. 2,400 miles of bunkers, obstacles, minefields, and artillery positions. Rommel spent 6 months strengthening the defenses after taking command. He placed millions of mines on the beaches, installed underwater obstacles designed to rip the bottoms out of landing craft, positioned artillery to create interlocking fields of fire, dug machine gun nests into concrete bunkers that can withstand naval bombardment. The Atlantic Wall is designed to make amphibious invasion impossible. Behind the wall stand 50 German divisions, 850,000 men. Panzer divisions held in reserve. If D-Day fails, the war will continue for years, maybe forever. Churchill said it best, "This is the most difficult and complicated operation that has ever taken place." But Eisenhower doesn't just face German military opposition, he faces the largest logistical challenge in history. The weight of command. Moving 156,000 men across the English Channel requires 5,000 ships, 11,000 aircraft, 50,000 vehicles, 250,000 tons of supplies. Everything has to arrive at the correct beach at the correct time. Naval bombardment has to suppress German defenses without destroying the beaches the infantry needs to cross. Airborne drops have to capture key bridges before German reinforcements arrive. Deception operations have to convince the Germans the invasion will happen at Calais, not Normandy. One mistake dooms the invasion. One intelligence failure alerts the Germans. One weather miscalculation drowns thousands of soldiers. Eisenhower carries the weight of knowing his decision will determine whether 156,000 men live or die. He carries something else, too. A note in his pocket, handwritten, dated June 5th. "Our landings have failed, and I have withdrawn the troops. My decision to attack at this time and this place was based on the best information available. The troops, the air, and the Navy did all that bravery could do. If any blame or fault attaches to the attempt, it is mine alone." Eisenhower wrote that note before giving the go order. He'll give it to reporters if D-Day fails, taking full responsibility, protecting his subordinates. That's the kind of pressure Eisenhower carries, not just tactical, moral. D-Day, the cost. D-Day succeeds, but the cost is brutal. 10,000 Allied casualties on June 6th, 4,414 confirmed dead. Omaha Beach is a slaughter. German defenders survived the naval bombardment. They occupy positions overlooking the beach. American infantry lands directly under German machine guns. The first wave is nearly annihilated. Bodies pile up on the sand. Wounded men drown in the surf. Landing craft explode on underwater mines. The beach is carnage. For 3 hours, Omaha Beach is on the verge of failure. General Omar Bradley, watching from a ship offshore, considers abandoning Omaha and redirecting troops to Utah Beach. But small groups of soldiers, sergeants, lieutenants, privates, decide to move forward. They crawl up the bluffs under fire, throw grenades into bunkers, fight their way inland. By nightfall, Omaha is secure. Barely. Eisenhower's success at D-Day makes him famous, but D-Day is just the beginning. After Normandy. After Normandy comes the Battle of the Hedgerows. 2 months of brutal fighting through French countryside. Every field is fortified. Every hedge conceals German infantry. Progress is measured in yards per day. American casualties mount to 120,000 by the end of August. Then comes Operation Martin Garden, September 1944. Montgomery's plan to drop airborne forces behind German lines, capture bridges across the Rhine, end the war by Christmas. Eisenhower approves the operation despite doubts. It fails catastrophically. The British 1st Airborne Division is destroyed at Arnhem. 8,000 casualties. Eisenhower takes responsibility for authorizing it. December brings the Battle of the Bulge, Germany's last desperate offensive. Eisenhower's headquarters is near panic. Some staff officers recommend retreating to more defensible positions. Eisenhower refuses, calls it the opportunity of a lifetime to destroy German forces in the open, orders counterattacks, calls Patton north, holds the line. The Bulge is defeated, but it costs 90,000 American casualties. Eisenhower commands through it all, makes the decisions, accepts the responsibility, manages coalition warfare between American, British, Canadian, French, and Polish forces, deals with prima donna generals like Montgomery and Patton who hate each other, balances political concerns with military necessity, maintains Allied unity while fighting Germany's best forces. But Eisenhower's toughest enemy isn't German military power. It's command responsibility. Every casualty report crosses his desk. Every failed attack is his decision. Every soldier who dies does so because Eisenhower ordered them into combat. He carries that weight for 11 months, from D-Day to Germany's surrender. 550,000 Allied casualties in Northwest Europe. His decisions, his responsibility. Most generals command battles. Eisenhower commands a coalition. Most generals face enemy soldiers. Eisenhower faces enemy armies and political pressure and logistics nightmares and coalition tensions. He defeats Germany not through tactical genius, but through steady, competent leadership under impossible pressure. Dwight Eisenhower faces the toughest command challenge in military history. He succeeds because he never flinches, never passes blame, never abandons responsibility. He makes the hard calls and lives with the consequences. That's why he's number 2. But there's one general who faces tougher enemies, worse odds, more brutal battles, and never loses. Number 1. Marshal Erwin Zhukov, December 5, 1941. Marshal Erwin Zhukov stands on a frozen hilltop 15 miles west of Moscow, watching German positions through binoculars. The temperature is minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit. The ground is frozen solid. 6 months ago, Germany invaded the Soviet Union with 3 million men. Now they're at Moscow's gates. The Soviet Union is dying. Leningrad is surrounded. Kiev has fallen. Smolensk is destroyed. The Red Army has lost 5 million men. Stalin executed most of his competent generals during the purges. The Wehrmacht is convinced Moscow will fall within weeks. Zhukov disagrees. He's been studying German dispositions for 3 days, notices they've overextended. Their supply lines are 600 miles long. Their tanks are running on captured Soviet fuel. Their infantry is exhausted, and they're not prepared for Russian winter. German soldiers wear summer uniforms. Their tank engines freeze overnight. Their weapons jam in the cold. The Wehrmacht is strong but brittle. Zhukov plans his counterattack, not a limited spoiling attack, a full offensive. 1 million men, 1,500 tanks, fresh divisions from Siberia, troops equipped for winter warfare, T-34 tanks with wide treads that can traverse snow. The counteroffensive. Zhukov positions them in forests outside Moscow, waits until the Germans are fully committed, then he attacks. December 5, 1941, the Soviet counteroffensive begins. 1 million men advancing on a 600-mile front. The Germans are caught completely off guard. They assumed the Red Army was finished, couldn't mount defensive operations. Zhukov proves them wrong. His forces drive the Wehrmacht back 150 miles in 3 weeks, saves Moscow, saves the Soviet Union, changes the entire trajectory of World War II. But saving Moscow is just the beginning. Zhukov's war lasts 4 years, 1941 to 1945. 4 years of continuous combat, no breaks, no rear area assignments, just battle after battle after battle. And every battle is against the Wehrmacht at its strongest, the German military machine that conquered Europe, the Panzer divisions, the SS, the Luftwaffe. Zhukov faces them all and beats them all. The enemies Zhukov faces are the best Germany produces. At Moscow, he defeats Army Group Center, commanded by Fedor von Bock. At Stalingrad, he encircles Friedrich Paulus's 6th Army. At Kursk, he stops Erich von Manstein's panzer offensive. These aren't second-rate commanders. These are the men who conquered France in 6 weeks, who destroyed Poland in 18 days, who drove the British off the continent at Dunkirk. They're professionals, veterans, tactical geniuses, and Zhukov beats them every single time. Stalingrad, August 1942 to February 1943. Zhukov plans Operation Uranus, the encirclement of the German 6th Army. 330,000 German soldiers trapped in Stalingrad. Hitler ordered them to fight to the last man. They do. 91,000 surrender in February. The rest die. The entire 6th Army is destroyed. Germany's most powerful field army eliminated. Kursk, July 1943, the largest tank battle in history. Germany commits 3,000 tanks, including Tigers and Panthers, the best tanks Germany ever built. Zhukov commands Soviet defenses, lets the Germans attack into prepared positions, minefields, anti-tank guns, dug-in T-34s. The Germans lose 1,500 tanks in 9 days. The offensive collapses. Germany never recovers. After Kursk, Germany is permanently on the defensive. Berlin, the final battle. April 1945, Hitler's last stand. The German capital is a fortress. 300,000 Wehrmacht soldiers, 500 tanks, thousands of anti-aircraft guns turned into anti-tank weapons. SS fanatics who've sworn to die defending Hitler. Volkssturm militia, Hitler Youth with Panzerfausts. Every building is fortified, every street is mined, every bridge is wired for demolition. Zhukov commands 2.5 million men, 6,200 tanks, 7,500 aircraft, the largest military force ever assembled for a single battle. He attacks on April 16th. The battle lasts 16 days, house-to-house fighting, the bloodiest urban combat in history. 80,000 Soviet soldiers die taking Berlin, another 280,000 wounded. But Zhukov takes the city, hoists the Soviet flag over the Reichstag on May 2nd. ends the war in Europe. The statistics tell the story. Zhukov commanded at Moscow, Leningrad, Stalingrad, Kursk, Operation Bagration, Berlin. Every major Soviet victory. He fought continuously for 4 years, defeated Germany's best generals, commanded the largest battles in history. Never lost. But the toughest part wasn't the Germans, it was Stalin. Stalin executed generals who failed. Zhukov knew that one defeat meant execution, not demotion, not reassignment, execution. Stalin had shot 13 of 15 army commanders in the 1930s purges. Zhukov survived by never losing, but the pressure was constant. Every battle was a test. Every decision was scrutinized. One mistake meant death. Zhukov also faced material disadvantages. Early in the war, German tanks were superior. German aircraft dominated. German logistics were better. Zhukov won anyway. Through tactics, through accepting casualties Western generals would never accept. Soviet doctrine was simple: attack. If the attack fails, attack again. Keep attacking until you break through. Casualties were irrelevant. The Soviet Union had 200 million people. Germany had 80 million. The math favored the Soviets if they were willing to accept losses. Zhukov was willing. He spent lives like currency, bought victories with blood. The Eastern Front consumed 27 million Soviet lives, military and civilian. Zhukov commanded battles that killed hundreds of thousands. The siege of Leningrad killed 1 million civilians through starvation. Stalingrad killed 2 million. Kursk killed 800,000. Berlin killed 360,000. These numbers are incomprehensible, but they were necessary. Germany couldn't be defeated without accepting catastrophic casualties. Western generals never faced these choices. Eisenhower commanded battles with 10,000 casualties and was horrified. Montgomery refused to attack unless he had overwhelming superiority. Patton's aggressive tactics killed 50,000 men and were considered reckless. Zhukov's single battles killed more men than entire Western campaigns. This is why Zhukov faced the toughest enemies, not just German military power, but Stalin's paranoia, Soviet industrial weakness, catastrophic casualties, political pressure, and the knowledge that failure meant execution. He won anyway, saved Moscow when everyone said it was lost, won Stalingrad when Hitler said it was impossible, stopped Kursk when Germany threw everything into one last offensive, took Berlin when defending it meant Germany's last hope. Georgy Zhukov never lost a battle he commanded, fought the Wehrmacht at its strongest, defeated Germany's best generals, commanded the largest battles in human history, and he did it under conditions that would have broken any other commander. That's why he's number one, because no other general faced enemies this tough and still won every single time. That's the list. 5 generals, 5 different theaters, 5 different kinds of hell. But only one man faced the absolute worst and never flinched. Georgy Zhukov, the man who saved the Soviet Union and destroyed Nazi Germany, the greatest general of World War II. If this video taught you something new, hit that like button right now. Subscribe and turn on notifications for more deep dives into World War II history. And here's my question for you. Which general do you think faced the toughest enemies? Are you Team Zhukov, Team MacArthur, Team Patton? Drop a comment and let me know. I read every single one. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.